Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first COABE webinar of the new program year. We encourage you all to turn on your cameras because it makes it feel more like we're all together if we can see you. And when I'm presenting, at least, I like to see the people who I'm presenting to. Lisa might not care, but she probably likes to see the people she's presenting to too. So we're very glad to have you here today. And today, Lisa Poplawski is going to talk about the role of adult ed programs in the shifting U.S. refugee trends. This is COABE session 1. I think I need the next slide. Oh, and already I am advertising. In September, we're going on the 26th, we're going to have one done by Jennifer Mock, the director at Alamance Community College, and Mike Ellis, the dean at Wake Tech, on strengthening leadership, collaboration, and digital equity in adult ed. October 23rd, the Caldwell ladies, Sherry Brown and Megan Norwood, are going to be talking about growing an effective team and a compassionate workspace. Or did I get that wrong? Megan Norwood's doing November, right?
Correct.
Okay. In November, Megan is doing Enhancing Education with Digital Scavenger Hunts and AI, a dynamic duo. And we will post these slides and Lisa's presentation and recording to the Professional Development Archives, where you can click on those things to register for them, or you can just go to our PD calendar and find these on the calendar and register for them there.
And I've also placed the registration in the chat if you are interested.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We also have the new director's orientation. It started last week. We will have session 2 in September, session 3 in October, and session 4 in November. Then we take a break until February and we do it all again. And if you haven't registered yet, or you are unaware, our credentialing courses have started. The math starts on Monday, so the registration is closed, but we still have standards and actions starting in September, on September 9th, and the core starting on September 23rd. You can also register to participate in one of our credentialing courses.
Exactly. Okay.
And now the real point of me talking is to introduce my old friend, who we call affectionately Lisa Pop. That's what they call her at Wake Tech. Lisa Poplawski, who is the Refugee Outreach Program Coordinator at Wake Tech. She has been at Wake Tech almost as long as I can remember. For 22 years. Back in the olden days, we thought of her as the Excel expert because she could make spreadsheets like no one else. But her tech skills have only improved since then. She has a BA from College of William and Mary. Is that also where Faith went? She go to William?
No, she went to James Madison.
James Madison. I get those characters mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
She is an awesome person, and she will give us a great presentation today. I expect that we will have a lot of interest in this. She learned this information at COABE, and Lee and I both found it fascinating while we were reviewing her slides. We learned a lot. So without any further ado, Lisa, take it away.
Well, I'm actually going to throw it to Lee. We have a couple of questions to open the session that give me a better idea of where your heads are at. So I'm going to let Lee put up a Mentimeter with a couple of questions about you, your program, and your thoughts about some of the things that we might discuss today.
Okay, and hopefully you can see you've got both the code, the Mentimeter code at the top that you can use to type in. Go to menti.com, and also you can use your mobile device to scan that QR code, and that should take you to Lisa's questions as well. So I will give you all a moment to join our Menti, and let me type in the chat as well the code. Let's hope this works.
I think there's a little edit button that's blocking the QR code.
Is there?
Like if it could just go up a tiny bit higher.
Okay, let me hold on. Then I need to exit out of presentation.
Oh, now I got it.
You got it? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say, I don't know if I can move this right now in
It
presentation.
helps when you exit it out because then
Oh, okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's try going back to present mode. Here we go. Okay, I hope we're all seeing this. Let me know if otherwise. Okay, let's see if I can get this started.
Come in.
Okay. So our first question, I don't know, Lisa, if you want to run this.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
give some context, but yeah.
Just curious, how have the demographics of your student population changed over the past 5 years, pandemic included? It's nice to see some familiar faces out there.
Huh. Okay.
That's very interesting. I think many of us will have those things in common.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, yeah. More students with education or higher education. It's definitely a challenge. Hispanic and Burmese, that's interesting. Burmese, Congolese, Central and South American and back. I think we're all seeing an increase in Ukrainian students. More refugees, less tech skills regarding computers and keyboard and typing. That's interesting. More students after the pandemic, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Afghan. Online classes, but more demand for seated. More
And
online
Julie said in the
classes.
chat, lots of students from Germany.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
More online classes, larger wait lists, larger refugee. Yep, yep, yep.
Okay, you want me to move on to the next one or give them a couple more minutes? Okay, excellent. Thank you for your responses.
Awesome. And what trends or challenges have you been observing in your program or classroom? That it could be on the ground from an instructor perspective, if you're an administrator or director, you know, really at any level. I know we are all trying to stay well right now with the new wave of COVID.
Yeah.
More diverse skill levels. That's interesting.
Gonna make
Yep.
differentiated instruction difficult, more difficult than it already is.
Indeed.
Hmm.
Higher demand for classes, more low level. More demand than we have room. We know that one. More fluctuations in abilities. Microaggressions. Wow.
Yeah.
Infrequent attendance, lack of literacy, more demand for classes. Desire for more academic focused ESL classes. The eternal challenges of transportation. Fewer students able to study for recommended length of time. Large demand, less desire for online during the day. Interesting. Students would like to move to curriculum classes but are undocumented. It's difficult if certification requires proof of status. And we are all dealing with the challenges of advances. We all know those. Issues of student attendance.
Yep, higher skilled students. Yeah.
More students wanting to learn ELA. Less teachers staying. More in frequency due to fluid work schedules. Yeah, these are all, I think we can all really relate to these. Really relate to these. Testing and standards and alignment. Yes, yes. Well, I think we can all take some solace in knowing we're not alone on some of these things.
Right.
I think that's great.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Lee.
You're welcome. I think I'm going to close the poll then. Thank you so much for Mentimeter, actually. Thank you so much for your responses. And I'm just going to let you take it away. I'm going to put myself on mute, Lisa.
All right, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We have a lot of information to get through today. I'm going to ask you to read some of my slides, and probably not all, but they do have a lot of information. COABE was really interesting. I had never been to COABE or TESOL. I was very impressed by the quantity of refugee-related sessions. While there weren't dozens, there were at least a half a dozen sessions, and they were really interesting to me. I hope they are to you. Today's presentation is going to be a little bit about refugee trends, hoping to go from the federal all the way down to our county levels, about new changes in federal immigration policy. They are very fluid, as always, but particularly fluid this time of year with all of the elections coming. Special educational needs. And I'm going to take this both from a college perspective and from a student's perspective, because I think a lot of you are administrators and directors. There is work being done to make things easier on the colleges, or at least an attempt to make things easier on the colleges as it relates to immigrant integration. And so the needs of us are being considered, as well as the needs of the students. We have a few questions at the end that will be up for discussion, and I hope you'll choose something that means something to you or that you really want to talk about. But I'm going to jump in. We'll try, between these sections, I'll try to offer a little time for questions. If the questions are going to be addressed later in the presentation, I'll probably say that and just keep moving. So let's get going. I'm going to let you read this one. This one's a long one. What does it mean to be a refugee? Everybody has a little bit different idea about what it means to be a refugee, but I'm going to give you a minute or so to just read through some of these items to think about what you think about refugees and what they are. So if you work in ESL, I think you probably feel as though you've had access and exposure to refugees probably your entire professional experience. In summary, refugees are suffering from forced relocation, whether it be by fear or threat, real physical threat. And generally, they've experienced some type of physical or emotional trauma. And I think one of the things that we all need to remember, and I think particularly down to a class level, is individuals typically come with a bag and little else. They have their people. Sometimes they come as families. Sometimes they come alone. Sometimes they are the leader and their families are tracking later and they're waiting on status to evolve so that they can come. So I think one of the things I most want to consider beyond this presentation today is the trauma that these folks bring. We had an instructor attend TESOL, and she brought back some incredible lessons about what it meant to be an instructor and to have your own baggage with regard to trauma, as well as dealing with those individuals in your classroom that might be dealing with traumas of their own, and also dealing with traumas and trying to operate interpersonally in a classroom. Some of those microaggressions that someone referred to earlier might be something that would be relevant. This again, it's a long slide. Refugee trends, status determinations. The The federal ORR, Office of Refugee Resettlement, defines refugees very narrowly when it comes to benefits eligibility. Refugees can come from many places all over the world, but our federal government gives benefits to a select number of those refugees. For example, you may have been seeing influx of Venezuelan folks, and that's been going on probably since 2017-18 at this point. Early on, ORR said, you know, those folks are not eligible for benefits under our definition. And so it's a bit fluid. It will change from year to year based on the crises that are occurring across our lovely and crazy world at the moment. Currently, there's special eligibility status, benefits eligible status being extended to Afghan, Ukrainian, Cuban, and Haitian entrants. Cuban and Haitian entrants in particular this is new for them. And there are a lot more folks coming in under that eligibility. We know that there are plenty of other populations that are not ORR eligible, but we still consider them broadly as refugees. This is a graph that was at the Migration Policy Institute Data Hub website, and I have a link to that in the resources at the end of this presentation. These folks have amazing data, and I encourage you to go and explore their website. The Federal Office of Refugee Resettlement, or ORR, as I referred to before, has set nationwide ceilings for the past few years, and they are not being reached. 50 to 60% is as far as they've gotten with those ceilings. So there is room for more folks to come under their definitions, but those ceilings are not being reached. I'm going to let you read this one as well for the specifics, but each year for the past few years, there have been new initiatives introduced to expand the eligibility for these benefits through ORR. Broadly, Afghan folks, Ukrainian folks, Cuban, Haitian folks, and now most recently Nicaraguan and Venezuelan folks are seeing more flexibility and being given refugee status. I don't know where all of you are from, but we do have the same traditional agency-assisted resettlement that we've always had. Many might be familiar with agencies such as USCRI or Church World Service, Lutheran Family Services. That's just called Lutheran Services these days. But names that you may have seen caseworkers or volunteers from those agencies coming to help your students get registered or translating or supporting them in some way. That still exists. But increasingly, resettlement is happening through private sponsorship, and many initiatives have been introduced over the past couple of years, particularly to have individuals or community groups meet certain criteria, and then they are allowed to be sponsors and provide for folks from particularly Ukraine and Afghanistan. Cuban Haitian community is very strong in our state. They are also sponsoring their own folks. So some of those leaders who are citizens or were families that had already settled in the United States, some time ago, they're gathering their resources together, meeting the criterion for sponsorship, and then bringing over folks as time and money permit. So in North Carolina, our refugee trends, just for funding, the North Carolina State Refugee Office distributes those funds from ORR for those folks they deem eligible. So with those funds, 57 of the 100 North Carolina counties have contract agencies, but that leaves a whole lot who don't. So these are all centered around different urban areas or areas particularly concentrated immigration places, sorry. North Carolina has historically seen more resettlement in Charlotte Mech and the Triad and the Triangle and down east with the agricultural needs or the jobs. But now that is expanding out, particularly like if you live here in the Triangle with us, people are moving farther out into Joco and into Harnett and Johnston County and into Harnett and further out because housing is impossible to find and it's very, very expensive at this time. There's also the private sponsorship model who they aren't necessarily touched by these agencies and they don't necessarily get that support. But the North Carolina State Refugee Office is working very hard for folks to be touched by these folks and working hard to put more agencies out there to provide this support to various groups. At the county level, I'm going to let you read this and find out if you're on this list, because we have seen a great number of Ukrainians resettling, and the Cuban Haitian resettlement is very much in flux and is increasing daily. So I don't know if you see county here. We have a little common ground here with Mecklenburg and Wake, but Cabarrus as well. But there's certainly communities that are now really expanding their efforts for sponsorship. So you may have new challenges. You may have different populations than you're accustomed to. You may just see an expansion of communities that you're already serving. So college-specific trends, I'm just going to talk about what I know. Wake Tech receives some of these federal monies through the State Refugee Office, and our top 4 countries of origin for this past program year are Ukraine, Afghanistan, Congo, and Haiti. Again, we're seeing more influx of Cuban Haitian, but with continued influx of Afghan folks. There is an initiative for folks, particularly the men who initially came that helped our military. Their families are now trailing, and there's more open status being offered to them as well. But the other countries that you can't see in the small print, Colombia, Syria, Cuba, El Salvador, Venezuela, and Guatemala. And then we have one here, one there, depending. Again, I want to reference the Migration Policy Institute. This is just a fabulous website. I can't say enough about them. They have state immigration data profiles, and while you can't see the fine type, the small list next to the map is county-based. So you can drill down and get some more pointed data for yourself at that website. It also has just an endless list of things that you can read and research. So it really, I was fangirling a lot over this this particular group of folks and their resources. So I'm going to take a little pause and see if anyone has any questions at this point. And I'm not an immigration specialist, but I will do my best to give you reference points.
Can I ask a question regarding connecting students with services?
Yes.
We have a Haitian student who, actually a couple of them, that I don't think they're terribly well connected to resources. And obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. So I'm in Jacksonville. I'm in coastal North Carolina. It's pretty small here. Do you know, like, I honestly don't even know where to start with that. Do you have some pointers?
I do. When this presentation goes out, at the very end, I have put in a whole list of resources and references for this presentation, including a map that was provided to us by the State Refugee Office that lists very specifically which counties have which services. And so I encourage you to take a closer look at that. Also, if I'm not mistaken, the departments of health in each county offer services to folks as like in the first 90 days or even probably the first year, particularly around, health and well-being, that type of thing. And I know that if you come in under any of the ORR specific statuses, you have TB tests and your immunizations are, gotten up to date and things like that. So that map and that list are at the bottom of my presentation, and that'll be offered to you.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? All right. Going once. All right, I'm going to move on then.
One moment, Lisa. I was monitoring the chat and we finally do have something. So Simeon did mention I have a student from El Salvador. She's trying to find financial aid services for her daughter. Are there any services to help pay for college?
We were just actually researching that earlier. One of my colleagues is in the meeting with me, and she might be able to provide some link there. It really is on a student by student basis because everyone's status is quite different. Everyone's education is different. Your county might have things available to you that, another county might not. I really would encourage anyone to start at the end, if you will. Start at the goal, look at the requirements, look at what those institutions offer, then work your way backwards. And there's a number of different programs, I think, that are available to folks like that, but also being connected to some of these agencies would be very helpful because lots of them have education specialists or youth specialists on staff. So that's really helpful. And they don't serve just these ORR eligible folks that I'm referencing. There are definitely folks out there that are serving really any immigration status. So
looks like Anne just shared a scholarship opportunity in the chat. So thank you so much for that. And Caitlin, I noticed you raised your hand, but then lowered it. Do you still have a question for Lisa?
That was an accident. Sorry.
Okay. Not a problem. Okay. I think we're good at this point.
okay,
Lisa,
great.
Thank you.
All right. Now, these are some of the slides you're going to have to read because there's a lot of information here. There are some federal immigration policy updates. Lots of things are in flux for obvious reasons. Immigration is a very sticky subject. We're in an election year. There's a lot going on. DACA is currently in limbo. There's no movement on it, hasn't been for quite a while. Current recipients can renew their status, but there are not any opportunities for new applicants at this time. The DREAM Act legislation has been introduced, but in many cases, as you'll read, it hasn't moved. The Farm Workforce Modernization Act, it's stalled. It was in the House, hasn't gotten anywhere. Temporary protective status has been granted, extended, I will say, to about 700,000 as a potential, and for 16 different countries of origin. That is an expansion from prior numbers, and it is, as you'll see probably in the next couple of slides, there are attempts to grant some grace in the coming months and years. So a lot of political football, and nobody really wants to throw it or catch it. Before the election, parole in place has been extended for spouses of citizens to apply for green cards without having to leave the United States. That's a big difference. In the past, you were expected to go home and apply and then come back, but there is some limited opportunities for parole in place at this time for folks like that. I referenced it earlier, but there are specific temporary statuses that are being extended for Ukrainians at the moment, Afghans at the moment, Cubans, Haitians, and newly Nicaraguan and Venezuelans. There is a document that I will be sending you a link to that is updated on a very regular basis with all the different statuses that actually are eligible for these benefits and for special circumstances. Human trafficking is certainly one of them. There are some religious discrimination statuses that are being still granted actually to our Montagnard population. If some of you have been working in ESL for a long time, you'll recall the Montagnard wave that we experienced probably 15 years ago. Our local governments are really trying to meet these needs of these expanded populations, and there is some funding that's being released from state and federal agencies. I can talk about that after this session. I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail, but some things are being offered, have been offered. Some grant opportunities have opened and closed, but they're trying to make a continuing effort to distribute funds. The Senate has passed a bill to change policies on border management, but again, it hasn't made it through the House. Deportation at the southern border is at an historic high. That's also relative to the historic influx. So these are just some of the issues. I think we all know some of them peripherally, but there's a lot to take in. And there's many, many updates, again, that the Migration Policy Institute has on their website that can give you far more detail than I can. Citizenship, the citizenship process is changing. There's a new test in the works, and they're piloting it right now, and they expect to make a decision by the end of the calendar year. Fees and applications went up, but new opportunities for 50% discounts have come up because of household income. They've really tried to work hard to make it more affordable, and the actual length, the pages in the application have been shortened by 35%. I think that's awesome. Process is moving a lot faster than it was. Sort of a kickstart after COVID got things moving. It used to be about a year. It's now down to months, which is great. Naturalization's up generally, but it went down this previous fiscal year. So I'm kind of working my way backwards. I'm going to leave this for you, like, to dig into afterwards, but interesting things in the works for citizenship. Potentials if we have a party change. I'm going to leave this for you to read. There's so much here. Lots of things that have been in place would be removed. Big changes at the college level. A lot of the funding that would be currently available would probably be less available as time passes. But I'm going to let you read this and again reference it when we distribute the presentation afterward. This has an enormous impact on our populations, particularly our ESL populations. And so I really encourage you to look into these and be supportive to your ESL populations in these next couple of months, because there's probably some real unease that's going on. So with that, that is sort of the end of the policy discussion. Does anyone have any questions regarding that? Anything in the chat?
So far, no, but we've been sharing resources, which is very heartwarming to see as you were going through policy. So we've got some more resources for scholarships for college, and then Hannah shared about an exception for refugee status where students could get in-state tuition, even if they haven't been in the state for one whole year.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, and Sarah commented that this is really helpful to see the policy and the changes that have occurred over the years. So just like Dan and I were impressed by this, I think your attendees are as well, Lisa.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I hope there's new information here. I do. All right, I'm gonna move on then to educational needs. And again, I really want to say for once, our needs are being considered. I think that's great. So OCTAE and the USCIS are working together, and they're trying to develop the equivalent of MSGs for us that we're already doing, which is awesome. And so they're really working around immigrant integration measures and trying to come up with quantifiable measures for things that we already do. And not only for things we already do, but also to encourage some of our programs to do things that might be easy to do or easy to track that you might not have thought of. I was advised by our leaders here that you guys know plenty about IELCE and IET, so I'm not going to go a whole lot of depth with that, but there are links again. I have lots of references for these different efforts that are going on. But I personally, having worked with get a job, get a better job, go post-secondary education, testing gains, all those things, it would really be nice to see more measures that are available to us that we know our students are already achieving. So with regard to those measurable indicators, OCTAE is researching and using their partnerships with other agencies to develop these measures. They're beyond what we always talk about. You know, get a job, get a better job, get your citizenship, credentialing, all those things. So they want to make it easy for the colleges to track it, to establish policies around it, to create curriculum or support the curriculum that we already have, and not tax the systems that would have to support these measures. Also, just incentivizing us to do so, which I think is also really, really valuable. We're all, working very hard at this time, and we're all working with limited resources. So they want to continue the programs, they want to expand the programs, and again, it's civic, linguistic, and economic integration. And for those of you, as I mentioned before, IELCE and IET take those two and help them work together. Equity. Equity is a big deal. Equity has been a buzzword for a while. Equity means different things. And at COABE, they talked about a lot of different kinds of equity. There have been some executive orders issued by the White House to address some equitable provision of services. Again, I'd reference this map that I'll share with you at the end. My grant is embedded here within ESL at Wake Tech. This is specific. We form partnerships and coordinate with case managers and do things to help them get their students in and maintaining ESL classes, or to help them knock down barriers to their next steps. We partner with these agencies. We don't necessarily formally partner with them, but when we can't provide something, we refer to them. When literacy programs can help support students we may not have the resources to serve, we refer to them. We have community-based organizations who have implanted themselves physically next to the neighborhoods where traditional resettlement is happening in Raleigh, which is awesome. So we do try to keep those partnerships active, communicative. Can you do this? Hey, we've seen this student. They look like they're in trouble. These are the things that we try to keep in communication with them. Assessing and addressing students with multiple challenge factors. I think this is where your instructional folks come in. Re-referencing that trauma, re-referencing transportation, re-referencing childcare, re-referencing all the things. We've got folks that are living, and it's desperate. It's hard to get to classes every day just because the means to get there sometimes is not consistent. So just looking at your student body, looking at the class level, looking at the individual level, and seeing what is happening with them, and perhaps referring them out to resources that we know exist in our communities. making that extra effort to make a safe and welcoming environment in our buildings, in our classrooms, in our, personal interactions in the hallways, that type of thing. Again, equity initiatives are underway both at the state and federal level. There's been a recent solicitation, I think it's closed now, for career pathways directly from USCIS, not through the state of North Carolina. There were some funds, I think, that were directed through, I believe it was NCDIT here for digital equity. So there's things going on, and I encourage you to look for those opportunities if you have the bandwidth to support them. Big buzzwords at COABE, brain waste. So that at first I was like, what in the world do you mean brain waste? But on the ground, we have a really interesting opportunity that we've never had before in this percentage, I believe. We've had individual folks, maybe small groups of folks come in at high levels of education, but the current refugee populations that are coming in through various countries, but primarily Ukraine and Afghanistan, just because of the sheer numbers, are coming in with higher levels of education. Varying levels of English as well. We have some folks, particularly some Afghan fellows that I met when I first took this job, who were already interacting every day with our military. They speak English perfectly, but they're trying to bridge the gap between their professional opportunities and their English skills and perfecting their writing and perfecting their reading. And so we are seeing them kind of go past ESL, if you will, and test directly into ABE. And so that's not uniform again, but I still speak often about the young man that I met my first week on this job, and he was sponsored, Ukrainian young man, sponsored with a family, with a mom, pretty much my age, with kids his age, and they were using our adult basic education program literally like a tool. He was waiting for status to get him into college. He had completed a semester of college in Ukraine, and he was anxious to keep going. And so they were just literally putting him somewhere that he could learn something and continue to practice his English and get better, so that when he was eligible for college and some of the tuition opportunities, that he was just going to seamlessly go into that program. So we were thrilled, and there are other folks like him, but there are other folks that are all different English language skill levels. So we have doctors and lawyers and teachers, and they are facing particular difficulties. The certifications and the degrees that they have in their own countries, it isn't nearly impossible to have their credentials evaluated and have any opportunities that resemble the ones they had in their own country. So we're working hard to think about non-traditional pathways, thinking about folks that could be translators in medical setting, folks that we just met with a lovely woman who happened to have run an English as a second language school in Ukraine, and what opportunities were available to her to get back into teaching, back into education. So that's really challenging, is seeing these folks come in with these incredible degrees and these incredible, bodies of academic work, and they don't have the opportunities to get back into their field. So we all know that CCR has a lot of different challenges to meet these needs, and each college is different as well. Foreign credentialing also comes into play for these folks. Ann Techman, my colleague on the call, and I attended a credential evaluation session at COABE that was really good, but really frustrating. And in some, It depends. That was the phrase we kept hearing. It depends. It depends. Well, what about this situation? Well, it depends. And it's the only thing that we could come to was a start at the end approach. So if you want to go to NC State, go to NC State, their admissions, and talk to them about what they need and what credentialing evaluation services do they consider. There's always a list. There's always a list. We accept them from these. We don't accept them from these. If you want to be employed at Cisco, go to Cisco. Ask their HR, what credentialing agencies do you have on your approved list? So start at the end. In other words, start where the goal is and work your way back. So see which agency you have to start with to, get your credential or your bachelor's, your master's, whatever it is, evaluated and translated into English so that, the employers can see it or the admissions department can see it. We also have seen that there are common denominators in these agencies, i.e., with the same teacher that we were talking to, we were looking at different websites and admissions and different things. There happened to be a common denominator agency that she could use that her credentials would be accepted for Wake County Public School System, for Wake Tech, for Durham Public School System. There was this one agency and it was magical, and that's what she pursued. She was getting her credentials evaluated for pursuing a job by that agency, and it was gonna help her with more than one opportunity. So we were very excited for her, but again, start at the end. Start at the end. Start at the goal, work your way back. And here, another opportunity. I, again, wasn't going to spend a whole lot of time, but there is a lot of opportunity in the partnership of IELCE and IET. Economic, cultural, and linguistic. There are components that can be integrated from both to help this population and all of our immigrant populations. So I would encourage you all that are involved at this level to join in that discussion. We're going to have a question for you, and I think that's fascinating. I think that's an interesting opportunity for everyone. So we're going to do some breakout sessions around these questions, and I'll give you a moment to read those. Lee, are you going to break everybody out for me?
I am sorry. I was trying to also attach this document in the chat, so I couldn't unmute myself at that moment. So yeah, if you just give me a moment, I can definitely set it up.
Well, I'm going to go over some of the questions. How do we address brain waste? How do we figure out how to help our students get to their goals when they've already achieved so much? This is challenging. We have really, medical is probably the worst. It's the hardest one. How do our programs reach populations based on local immigration trends? That one I think is even more interesting in the sense that there are partnerships that you might be able to reach out to someone and say, y'all are providing these services here in my county or in the counties that we serve. What are you seeing and where are they and what challenges are they having? The new measures. What are potential programmatic considerations for the new measures? That's interesting to me. I know what we're doing. I struggle sometimes to know all the things we're doing here, but we do a lot of things here, and there are things we are already doing that might be considered for these new measures. It also would be great to get credit for what we're already doing. And then how to embed civics, linguistics, and economics in adult education curriculum. These are the three things that I believe that IELCE and IET together can help address. So if you guys have a specific interest. I'm not sure how we're going to do this, Lee, but I'm going to leave
Yes.
that to you.
Okay, well, thank you for setting that up. So I inserted in the chat a document that includes these questions that Lisa just mentioned. So we do have just a little bit of time. We wanted to give you some time to reflect on, think about everything that Lisa has shared. We're already sharing resources that we know regarding supporting our refugee populations. So let's include that in this discussion in these breakout rooms. So I'm going to give you around 6 to 7 minutes. I'm going to open them up right now. Introduce yourselves, pick one of these questions, these topics that you're interested in discussing, and yeah, just have a chat. Let's share with each other. Okay, enjoy.
I was just sharing, I wanted to share the map that I had referred to earlier. This is the map of folks that are funded by the North Carolina State Refugee Office. You will see they are not in every county, but there are also, in addition to the folks in these counties, would refer you to the bottom right, that Elon, CDOS Durham, and the New Arrivals Institute that is in the Triangle serve all counties with online services, particularly New Arrivals does driver's ed, and that's awesome. So if you have any folks that really need those, that is they do them very, very regularly. I would say almost once a month they have signups for online driver's ed classes, and they are well aware that they have multiple languages. They're very helpful about kind of getting that to a manageable class. So but again, I'm gonna stick around if anybody wants to talk or chat or look at other resources together. And again, I'll make this available by PDF after the session.
Take care. Bye.